Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Embassy Row Live, an occasional program broadcast by the World Affairs Councils of America. My name is Bill Clifford. I'm President and CEO of WACA, based in Washington, D.C. And it's my pleasure to invite you from around the country and perhaps even outside the United States to our program. We have a very special guest, Dr. Hend Al-Muftah of Doha, Qatar. She is one of the first female Qataris to be appointed by the Emir of Qatar in November 2017 as a member of the country's Shura Council, its top advisory body. And she is currently an associate professor and vice president for administration and finance at the distinguished Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. There she lectures in the School of Public Administration and Development Economics. Dr. Al-Muftah has been actively involved in many local, regional, and international debates and events regarding political participation of Qatari women and empowerment issues of Arab women in the region, as well as migrant labor, human rights, and other social justice issues. We're excited to have her because of the recent announcements about the upcoming Qatari elections in October of this year. I'll mention also that Dr. Al-Muftah has served and is serving as Vice President for the International Women's Empowerment and Capacity Building Organization, an NGO based in the UK. She is one of the first female Qatari professors and certainly in her field of human resource management. Dr. Al-Muftah, Hend, if I may, welcome to Embassy Row Live. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Bill, for having me in your Embassy Row Live and giving me this opportunity to talk about some issues related to my country. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a pleasure to have you, and we of course want to mention our long-standing partnership with the Embassy of the State of Qatar and the privileges we've had of taking members of councils, leaders of World Affairs Councils to Doha in 2018 and 2019. We were sorry not to be able to do so last year due to the pandemic because we learned so much from you. It's 7 o'clock now where you are in Doha, Hind, and I want to say, thank you especially for making time in your evening. And speaking of time, as a professor of a teaching professor and administrator, someone who's active in politics and involved in domestic and international civic organizations like you are, my first question is, how do you manage it all? You're also a mother of 2 daughters. How do you do it?
To make it a brief, I'm full-time employee, full-time member Shura, member of the Shura Council, full-time wife, full-time mother. So there's no magic or secret behind it. Actually, it all has to do with time management and the priorities. And of course, having a supportive family members, supportive husband, and of course, supportively and family-friendly working environment and supportive leader. By the end of the day, I'm not superwoman. I'm just a woman who can base her time based on her priorities. And thank God for creating, giving us the multitask, skill.
Well, I know you do it well. I'd like to, point out that interestingly in Qatar, in the Gulf, the advancement of women as a whole in society has come in large part due to state-led empowerment, perhaps more than activism by women. Could you explain sort of the experience of what that means, and how likely is that to remain true for your daughter's generation?
Well, just as you had just stated, the development of Qatari women was top-down state-led approach rather than activist, or instead of having women going to the streets to protest to gain their rights. And this is basically started in the mid-90s, basically 1995, when His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa came to power in 1995. And since then, many economic, socially, specifically socially, development take place, including the educational reforms, which enable the Qatari women to be more actively participating in the society. And when talking about the development of Qatari women, in the society, no one can ignore the great and influential role played by Her Highness Sheikh Moza bint Nasser, who didn't only focus on changing the cultural and social, stereotyping regarding the women position in the society, but more significantly, she was able to initiate and to establish new legislations, regulations, and even organizations, institutions that are mainly focusing and dealing with women's issues in the country. And education in itself, in addition, of course, to the supportive leadership, were one of the most significant key factors, as I really considered, to enhance and to strengthen and empower Qatari women in the society since the 1995.
Very good. How has the experience of Qatari women been similar or different to those of Arab women in the region in terms of their educational attainment, their
honestly speaking, we cannot compare the experience of Qatari women, even within the GCC region, when it comes to women empowerment. Taking into account, like, for example, we have two countries where their women were, heading the Qatari women in terms of women empowerment and political participation. I'm talking basically about Kuwait and Bahrain. But Qatari women, I would say, was lucky enough to have supportive political leadership that really strengthened their educational attainment, which in turn resulted in increased economic participation. When talking about education, I can tell you, based on today's the educational attainment statistics, 51% of the higher education are women and Qatari females. And when talking about the Qatar University, 70% of Qatar University, which is the biggest national university in Qatar, are Qatari women. And in doing so, 59 also are economically active. And can you imagine that 30% of Qatari women are holding leadership positions? And I'm talking about not ministerial, but I'm talking about, managerial positions in the government and public sector. And the interesting thing is that even at business level, they constitute like 13% of the SMEs entrepreneurs. And I think they believe more than 150 millions of the business and 1 billion of Qatar stock market. So having such economic progress for the Qatari women to be part of this economic development, I think it paves the way for enhancing the women political participation, which actually started back in 2003, where the first Qatari woman, female elect in the municipal council, and she was, the interesting thing, the astonishing thing is that she was elected for 4 cycles with high votes among her, the other males. And of course, it continued till today. And as you had just said in introducing me, the year 2017 witnessed the first change in the Qatari women history of empowerment, by the appointment of the first 4 ladies in the Shura Council, which gratefully I was one of them.
You mentioned the example and the great work of Sheikha Moza, who is the mother of the current Emir, Tamim. Talk about her role today, and maybe talk about you're younger, but I'm curious about the path of women over time in Qatar, because you yourself, at the pinnacle of educational achievement with a PhD from the UK, you nevertheless, I read, wanted to pursue medicine as a course of study and perhaps a career, and that was not available to you then. What have the experiences been for people of the generation of Sheikha Moza and you yourself, and how are they changing in the educational realm?
I always believe that to lead a change, you need a role model, but a real role, influential and powerful model. And I believe strongly that Sheikha Moza, she was the right person to lead the social and cultural change in Qatar. Having, a very influential, very well educated, very clear visionary, strategic visionary regarding what does she want for the Qatari women to be in the future, helped us a lot to reshape our, situation and our future. I mean, I couldn't think about, having or proceeding my master's degree, even though I was graduated in 1990, only 7 years later. I'm talking in 1998, sorry, 1998 years later, when of course Sheikh Moza came to power. And then, which this is just a very simple example to show you how having such, great influential in the top ruling power really push us as a Qatari woman. I'm talking, of course, about my generation, and helped us a lot in reshaping our future. And that's why I keep saying in all of my speeches that Qatari women was very lucky to have such supportive political leadership. And I call the 1990s and the 2000s the two golden decades for Qatari women, because it was the beginning and the time for Qatari women to be promoted, not only by the government, by the supportive political leadership, but also having different opportunities in education, in career, in economy, and different aspects of life to start actively participating in our society.
I have already seen questions come in from our audience members, and I realized that I neglected to mention at the top that I really encourage the audience participation to submit questions in the Q&A box, which we will carry to Hend, Dr. Al-Muftah. And I have one from a young lady from the Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security, an organization in the United States. This is Lauren Pompey, who writes, "What has been your most valuable tool while working to empower and motivate young women to pursue their ambitions?"
Education. And education will remain for a long time, forever, the main key factor in empowering anyone. I mean, it's easy to have money to empower them economically. It's easy to have any kind of tool that empower them in any aspect of life. But without proper quality education, you cannot turn such investment into real empowerment. Empowerment will remain, like written in a beautiful document, but cannot be really implemented unless it is equipped with quality education.
To expand on that, I'm sure you mentor so many of your students, your graduate students at the Doha Institute, not just professionally, but what do you impart, what do you see as important in sharing about life skills and how to manage the inevitable work-family balance that women face everywhere?
Well, this is really one of the main issues that really women face wherever they are coming from, regarding balancing the family work-life balance. Probably we really need to think seriously about human resources, friendly, family-friendly policies where women can easily work and be so productive and very achievable, at the same time balancing, her family and her children raising and so on. In addition to the family friendly human resources, we need also supportive working environment. And this is not to talk about having, nurseries or whatever, but also having supportive, boss, supportive teamwork who can understand the different situation of different women. Like if I have one of my kid is sick today and they cannot go to work, it's okay if I can work from home. And there's nothing wrong if my friend or my colleague he replace me or he can help me in achieving, one of the tasks. We are talking about a new culture, how to promote women and to be more effectively and efficient in their work while they are full-time mothers.
This question comes from a colleague at the Cleveland Council on World Affairs. And let's see, it's from Richard Eastburn. And he asks, in your opinion, what qualities, knowledge, and character do women uniquely bring to the global table and in Qatar that they have the opportunity to express, share, and lead in their country and really beyond Qatar's borders?
Well, I think knowledge has no gender. Knowledge is knowledge, skills are skills, competencies are competencies, whether they were for females or for males. But unfortunately, culturally, and has nothing to do with Qatar, because I've seen it even in the States and everywhere around the world, even very advanced democratic countries. It's about the culture, that how they, the stereotype of, can women, for example, knowledge be so effective and of added value to this negotiating table or to this project or to this task and so on. I don't believe that it's more about knowledge within women or within males, but it's more about how I can transfer this knowledge into actions and into implementations, and then how can I develop it into more future strategies. And it has nothing to do with gender.
What's holding more women back, do you think, in terms of they are graduating with better degrees and entering the workforce in greater numbers, but globally, and I think in Qatar also, the percentage of women who rise to leadership positions such as you've held is relatively few. Even looking at the Shura Council, 4 women out of 45 members. That's only 10%.
Ironically, we've been talking about women's equity since ages. But if you check today, is there any 100%, any country in the world that really reached the 100% of equity balance between the two? No. We are talking about culture. Culture cannot be changed easily, even if I'm living in a very high democratic country. Even in the States, I've seen so many women, very professional, with very high profile in terms of their career, and they are suffering from the glass ceiling, the stereotype, the cultural barriers, and so on. It has to do with human nature.
Well, this is a timely question from audience member Warren Salinger. He asks, how are Qatari men reacting to the increased freedom and opportunities provided to Qatari women by government leaders?
To be honest, Qatari society culturally and socially been changing since the mid-90s. And we used to be very conservative society, but today we are a very open society. Very open, it doesn't mean that we are very liberal, but very open, it means that we are so sick to our Islam and we do respect our traditions and values, but it doesn't mean that we have to be closed-minded and, like, for example, not to let my daughter or my sister to work in a mixed working environment or to go in the radio or on the TV, without having a beer or something like this. These ideas doesn't exist anymore. And this is not to generalize, because yes, by the end of the day, we are a tribal society and we still have some very conservative people. But I'm talking about the majority, and modern Qatar, which has been built since 2 decades, it's very open, even though still having the traditions of their own culture, and they are respecting it very, very well, even among the new generation.
What has been your experience as one of 4 women on the 45-member Shura Council? What role do you think?
Honestly, it is a very interesting experience that gives us the opportunity as the first for Qatari women to enter, the legislative, the Shura Council. One of the most interesting experience that personally I gained is having a legislative eye and experience on how is such, policies, are developed by the government, and how is it seen and reviewed by the Shura Council. And the interesting thing is that before joining, I used to think that such legislations are always made by the government, and there's nothing to do within the Shura Council. But the interesting fact, I found that no. I mean, for example, we have some of the legislation that the state coming and come forth, from the cabinet ministers, to the Shura Council, probably 6 or 8 months. And there was a lot of debates about some of them. And also, it opened my eyes on how the diplomacy are really working. I'm talking about locally and regionally, and of course internationally. My exposure within the international parliamentarian and the members really enhanced my experience in the diplomatic affairs, but also gain me very mature experience in how to be so wise when it comes to diplomatic affairs, and how to have, a very detailed eye when it comes to review legislation before we can say it is finally approved.
Mm. I'm interested to know if you can elaborate on any specific issue that you felt was really challenging to deliberate on, and what might be the outcome in your advice collective.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
So I was wondering if there was a specific issue that you'd like to elaborate on that would indicate, how the body works and what challenges you might feel, and also, do you have an equal voice to every member, to the men?
Yeah. Let me talk briefly about the structure of the current Shura members. It's composed of 45 members, but the currently it's only 41 members, and we are all appointed by His Highness Emir. We have equal opportunity, we have equal voice and everything. And we have 5 committees that in charge about, the 3 main tasks. I would say the 3 main tasks, because there are so many tasks, but the big 3 main tasks are, approving the budget, approving any legislation from the government, and we can also have the right to raise any kind of legislation we are looking for, in addition to the friendship committees with different parliamentarian bodies internationally. So how does it work is that we are members in the body itself, but we are also members in different friendship committees and the committees themselves. The thing that I would like you to share with you is that we have the right as a member to raise any legislation we would like either to review by the government or a new legislation. And I remember probably one of the most interesting, proposal that I was involved in is that during the Qatar blockade, just, after the Qatar blockade, 2-3 months, probably that was in, I think December or something like this. One of the disadvantages of the Qatar blockade is the social connections within the family themselves, where we find a lot of Qatari mothers for children from UAE or Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. They couldn't travel to there, they couldn't renew their documents, passport, and all of these, so that they can pursue their normal life, having a healthcare, cover, having education access, and so on. So when I proposed this one, interestingly, I found the cabinet minister himself, Abdullah bin Nasser, during that time, very supportive. And instead of wasting many time, from day one, from the first session, he approved that they should be treated as Qatari and they should have access to healthcare, education, employment without any barriers from the government. So this is just to show you that if you have a good judgment and a good case study, and I always, tell my students, it's not about what you sell, but it's about how do you sell it. So if you have a good, good background, good justification, how to propose, any project or any issue, and you guarantee, it's easy for you to guarantee, the stakeholders or the decision maker approval. And this issue in particular really makes me so happy when I find many mothers are so happy and satisfied and even secured about their, children, positions, and security in Qatar.
Thank you for that. I have a few more questions about how the Shura Council is likely to evolve. Before I get to them, I noticed that Nancy Smith was raising her hand to ask a question. I may be seeing this message from a different time because I, of course, dropped off briefly. But Nancy, if you're there and would like to pose a question to Dr. Al-Muftah, please do so.
Hello. Hello. I was wondering, hello. Hi. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. I was wondering how social media has affected the women's rights in Qatar.
Great question, because Dr. Al-Muftah is one of the most active and recognized for her social media skills.
Absolutely, it affected the women's human rights and the human rights in general. You can see nowadays how social media are, moving the decision making and the policy making. It's not shaped or controlled by specific people anymore. It affects the decision making itself, even in the governance body. I remember whenever there are any issues related to women, the easiest way, of course, is to raise it through the social media. And we have many examples here in Qatar that taking place within the social media. One of the main issues, of course, in the old days, it used like to be basically human rights regarding, driving, having access to male-dominated educational programs, male-dominated careers, opportunities, and so on. But now one of the issues that like women would like to have, it's like family, work-life balance policies. I'm talking about the HR policies, which is being also taken seriously by the government, and they are studying right now how to promote these policies like, part-time, online, and so on, specifically after the pandemic experience. In addition, one of the issues also is that they need quota system for the Shura Council, for the new election quota system, for having leadership positions in the ministerial cabinet and so on. So, these voices being raised a lot recently by the Qatari women and being reachable by the government themselves in order to interact positively with those voices.
Thank you. Turning back to the political question of the announcement last November by His Highness Sheikh Tamim that there would be Shura Council elections this October. As you said, there are 45 seats, 41 occupied right now, and they're all appointed by the Emir. But since the 2003 Constitution was promulgated, it called for 30 of those 45 being elected by universal suffrage, men and women 18 or older. Could you talk about what this coming election, how big a step is it in the development or progress of Qatari governance?
Yeah. Let me first stress that the move towards legislation or legislative election was neither due to protest or petition style of the other GCC countries. Rather, it was meant to be implementing the Qatar Constitution, which was approved, as you just mentioned, in 2003. In addition to the political leadership vision started from Sheikh Hamad and continued to Sheikh Tamim to build modern Qatar, where when you are talking about Qatar, modern Qatar, we always have to talk about the active participation of its citizens in the policy making and the decision of different aspects of life. So having such election was really meant and was very planned since 2003, as you know, and it was postponed either because of the draft wasn't ready or because of political situation, specifically in 2013, when Sheikh Hamad moved the power to Sheikh Tamim, and of course, through the blockade because some of the neighboring countries were against this situation. The new election will take place hopefully in October in 2021. And the unique within this election, it gives one of the rights, one of the new tasks being given to the elected members is the right to dismiss and to question any minister or any government official, which wasn't, available previously. In addition, it also covers, I'm talking about the draft law, it covers many articles that talk about the voting. For example, any Qatari citizen age 18 years can vote. It also talks about the voting procedures, including the electronic registration, the appeal, and so on. But also, there are so many detailed articles that talk about the election process itself, including, like, for example, the media campaign funds shouldn't exceed to 2 million Qatari riyal, and of course, with a clear and strict supervision regarding to be ensured and guarantee that there will be no external financial for any political or religious reason. In addition, to have, I would call it polite election process, like to avoid any offensive regarding, tribal or religion or any other issues. In addition, to be sure the integrity of the election process in line with the international standards. And by the way, the people in Qatar are so excited about the new election. And I know some people, they've been working very properly and very professionally on start planning their campaign for the election, where they really started putting, the plan very well and focusing on even on their own people, networking and connection, which is still, of course, not announced.
Yes, I'm glad that you touched on the several postponements, including the transition of power at the from Father Emir to the current Emir, as being reason for not getting to this stage of elections until now. But it is interesting, the timing, and you alluded to at least perhaps one reason being, the blockade. I wonder also if this is part of, or at least if it's not because of the coming FIFA World Cup that Qatar is hosting in 2022, to what extent this election would improve Qatar's soft power in its world image.
Well, the election has nothing to do with World Cup 2022 because it was actually planned and announced since 2004, if I'm not mistaken. Even if it was, it was postponed many times, but that was basically due either to technical issues or political matters. But today, Qatar leadership very aware in terms of enhancing and strengthening the active participation of its people, not only on the political, decision making, but also in different aspects of, life within Qatar, even in domestic issues. What I mean. So I believe it's been really very well planned within the leadership. And by the way, as I said, Qatari people are really so excited about it. But let me share with you the interesting thing is that even Qatar is not yet classified as democratic country, if you would say democratic. But Qatari people been practicing such democracy based on the Shura, principle of Islam. In addition, we have culturally something which is called Majlis, in addition to the social media, where Qataris find themselves very open to express anything they would like. And I can expand till the end of the day to explain how the social media and the Majlis itself, debates or, dialogue being, conveyed to the government, and specifically when it comes to domestic issues.
So you raise a couple of points, and I see a question crossing as well, which I'll get to momentarily. One is the excitement of as the election draws near in October, and the other is this notion of, the democraticness or the how Qataris within their culture and religion can conduct a kind of democracy without maybe democracy as we understand it in the West. And the reason I'm mentioning this is Freedom House, which publishes an annual report, actually ranked Qatar in terms of political rights and civil liberties below Afghanistan and Iraq. And this is kind of confusing for people in the United States and elsewhere, because we see such a stable, prosperous country, and also we recognize what war has done to Afghanistan and Iraq, and don't associate that with democracy. But how important it is, or how does someone like you in politics regard that perception from outside bodies, the kind of pressure it might put on to expand personal freedoms and other liberties?
Well, Bill, to me, democracy is about freedom, but not absolute freedom, and justice. And I might raise this question, to what extent you find a democratic country is really offering the freedom and justice in any democratic society. When it comes to Qatar and probably any other part of the world, it's not easy to import, ready shelf whatever democracy plan and say, hi guys, we have to implement it today in Qatar, or Kenya, or whatever the country. Yeah. This is not the way how democracy comes. Democracy, you need the grassroots themselves to be involved. And as I said, we are being a small size country, but we are very connected socially. in addition, we are a modern country. We don't have that, very, long historical background, so that we can say we are building on our, historical background. That's why we have to build our own democracy, customized Qatari democracy that cannot be copied even from our neighborhood. Because we do have some shared common characteristics, but by the end of the day, we have also our own, privilege or whatever that need to be dealt very properly and very carefully even. So yes, we are of course welcoming the democratic experience, but it should be taken into consideration some of the challenges, like the tribal. We are very tribal society. We are male-dominated society. So are we going to be representative, or to cover all the, the tribes or all the families or the whole Qatar? Or will women, for example, will be represented? Are they going to be elected? We are still facing these challenges, but these challenges might not be the same challenges as other, experience a new democratic country is facing. That's why, again, I say we have to be very careful about our own Qatari democratic experience, where we have to customize it ourselves. We have to develop it ourselves. And when I say developing, we cannot finalize it. We cannot, say, hi guys, we have excellent experience. No, it needs ages. It needs at least, probably 3-4 generations, so that we can say that our democratic experience is mature enough.
Well, I wonder if there can be lessons learned from your own experience with the one body that is open to elections now, which is the Central Municipal Council. I must confess I don't understand its functions so well, but I have read that it's a 29-member body, and that in the latest election, which was in 2019, 85 candidates ran, 5 of them women. 2 were re-elected, the same number in 2015. But what was interesting to me is not so much the makeup, although that is interesting, but the participation fell from 70% in the 2015 election to just over 50%. And I would expect that, if the people of Qatar are going to get to vote in October for the Shura Council, which is a more important body, this will generate the excitement you talk about. But what does that say? That, were people getting tired of limited voting rights, or how do you read that? And what lessons can be drawn from that body?
No, it's not about limited voting. It's about maturity and having the right to vote or to elect the qualified people. And interestingly, this morning I was, just looking at Twitter. One of the Qatari guys, who's, I think he's gonna nominate himself, he was, writing a tweet. Are you going to nominate or to vote for your relatives, or the one who's more qualified? Amazingly, probably 70% of the answers was, of course, for my relatives. You see? And here where I'm talking about that, it's not easy for us as a Qatari people to import any ready-made democracy plan and implement it in Qatar. We have to build it. And that's why when I say we have to build it, we have to change, or focus a lot in the awareness campaign, how to vote for qualified people, not for my relatives, how to qualify for those who gonna convey or who gonna, listen to my voice or listen to my concerns, whether it was domestically or regionally or internationally. This is one of the challenging. But going back to the municipality council experience, it was good. It was good, specifically for Qatari women's status and empowering, because we have one of the ladies, her name is Sheikha. She won for 4 cycles, and over the 4 cycles, she even reached the highest votes.
Oh, really? Of all candidates?
Of all the men, yeah.
And is she active?
She is very active. To me, she is very active.
Politically today?
Yeah, and I believe she's going to nominate herself for the election. She should.
We are open to the audience for questions, and you can post them to the Q&A box. And I have one from Ken Fox, who writes from Charleston. Are Qatari students, especially women, taught religious tolerance or comparative religions?
Answering these questions, I cannot generalize how Qatari female students are interacting or reacting to this matter, because it really differs. I mean, when I'm talking about Qatar University, for example, I don't believe they talk about such comparative religion, unless it is part of their own educational program. But for example, those who are studying in the American educational city in universities, I think, yes, it is one of their, of course, open dialogue, and it's a must to interact and to be open to other religions, and even to be aware of what's behind it and how to argue it.
Great. I welcome more questions, and I'll ask, when we visited Doha a couple of years ago and met with many high officials, including those at the Shura Council, we heard a great deal about the Qatar National 2030 vision and how the country was looking economically past the oil and gas sector to diversify the economy for long-term sustainability. And diversity and inclusion were words that were mentioned a lot more generally about society. And I wonder how you see the progress that's being made politically. Are we seeing a greater level of inclusion across Qatari institutions and companies and educational institutions? And by that, I mean not just women, but broadly, we're celebrating Pride Month here for people with different sexual orientations. We're talking about labor and other issues.
Okay, Qatar vision focus on 4 pillars: the human capital, which is basically focusing in the education, and I believe that Qatar's educational reform is really doing great today, and we can even see the fruit of this investment. It's not only about the educational attainment of Qataris, but also where Qatar is becoming as an educational hub, not only in Qatar Foundation, but also in other institutions, Qatar University, DI, and other private universities. And then we have the economic. I believe also, and this is not only my opinion, but it's been also, many scholars and researchers have been arguing this, that Qatar is doing excellent job in terms of diversifying its economy away from the hydrocarbon and oil and gas, and more recently in attracting foreign direct investment. Social development, we have good enough institutions that take care about disabled or disadvantaged or marginalized people in the country under the social work or under the Ministry of Social Development or any QF or any other organization. Again, also with the environment, sustainable development, energy, and all of these issues are covered and implemented and supervised very well by the government. Now, when talking about different issues like sexual, orientation or these issues, now this has nothing to do with other national vision. It's more about our Islam. It's more about our religion. And if you remember, I said we are very open, country, but it doesn't mean that we have to forget about Islam or to forget about religion. We do welcome anyone who would like to come to Qatar, but we also appreciate their understanding of our culture and, more significantly, their awareness about our religion. It's exactly when I go in India and I walk in the street and when I see a cow crossing the road, I have to wait and respect until the cow safely reach the other part of the road. It's exactly like when I go to Japan or China and I see Buddhism or whatever, I have to respect their religion. And this is what we are expecting, not only, I'm not talking now, I'm talking about, as a Qatari, citizen, where we need, we do respect, any expat to come to our country, but we also appreciate their respecting to our religion and their understanding of our culture. And this is being practiced since a while, in Qatar and in the open areas and the public, malls and so on, where I can see people really respecting the others. And I can see also the expats are so, getting in touch with the Qatari people. We have a lot of friends, Westernized, European, even from different African and Asian countries. And we are so connected together. So it's not about whether we are having this or against this, or we are allowed this or not allowed this. It's about respecting each other.
Very well, and thank you for leading us down the path of sort of, mutual international respect. As we enter questions from the international realm, I have one from Stan Cohen, who asks you to please comment on the Qatar view of the Abraham Accords, and would Qatar consider joining them?
To be honest, Qatar have very clear, Qatar has been, they have very clear and very straightforward positions and regarding the Palestinian and the Abraham Accord and everything. And this has been announced starting from the leadership, Sheikh Tamim, and to the ministry, and also many, many other stakeholders. Palestine, it's not a case of the Palestinians themselves. It's a case of it's the Muslim, it's the case of the Arab, it's the case of the humanity. It's the responsibility of the humanity. And if I would like to talk frankly, the Palestinian-Israeli issue is not a normal conflict. It's not even equitable or even balanced in power between colonial or two groups. I'm talking about, the very strongest, military, nuclear state in the region compared to stateless people, innocent people who've been affecting and, suffering from ethnic cleansing, from racism, occupation, apartheid. And we are talking also about, I think, 7 million, something like this, million Palestinian refugees around the world. So I believe when Qatar stands within the Palestinian people, it means that they will do so, and they will not stop their humanitarian aid, to Gaza and to Palestine in general. And I would like also to highlight that when Qatar help Palestinian people, they do help and they aid the Palestinian people, not Hamas, as we've been criticized most of the time. And any aid to enter, to Gaza or any territory of Palestine, it is done through Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And needless to mention that Hamas was existed, I believe, in the 80s, where Palestine existed since ages. So Palestine will remain priority for Qatar.
Thank you for sharing that. I wonder how issues like the Palestinian question, and also even the blockade that was imposed by Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt on Qatar in 2017, how that sort of was dealt with in classrooms in your university, to what extent students who had experienced Qatar's resilience in that blockade were becoming more engaged in having conversations about such issues. Do you see that happening? You mentioned the social media engagement, but in the classroom, is there curiosity like that? And to what extent do people talk about issues regionally?
One of our tasks and responsibilities as an academic is to bridge the gap between the theory and the practice. So having, such a crisis, if I may call it, like Qatar blockade or the Palestinian conflict, it's a good opportunity for the student to start, search among and negotiate and argue whether how is this happen and how is whatever. For example, in my teaching, I used to teach students about the governance and the public administration. So I took Qatar blockade as a case, and how did it affect the social cohesiveness in the Qatari society, the economy, even the soft power of Qatar, like having Qatar Airways cannot fly all around the world because of the borders and so on. And we raised so many cases among the students, and the same issue applicable to the Palestinian-Israeli conflicts, where a student can find it a good example how to think methodologically about how to deal with this case and how to start, argue with or against any specific point of view raised by any scholar or researcher. So it's a good opportunity to utilize. And this is the uniqueness of teaching university students and the beauty as well, where you can enhance their life skills and their also research and criticizing skills.
Thank you. I will invite my colleagues and friends from around the network who are attending this conversation to post their final questions if they have them. And meanwhile, Hend, thank you so much for this opportunity to have the dialogue with you. We've been asking all about your country and the status of women and democracy. What pluses and minuses have you seen lately in the United States form of governance? We now have a female vice president. We have the head of the House of Representatives has been and is a female, Nancy Pelosi. She and Kamala, there's never been that in the United States, but at the same token, we're seeing all kinds of anti-democratic moves as well. How does this strike people like you and your countrymen and women?
You know what I really like about the state's democracy is how people can unify and can be united one voice against whatever the government can take. If they feel that this decision or this policy is going to hurt them, it's going to affect them, it's going to affect the humanity, like what's happening now in Palestine. You can see, the protesters all around the different United States, which something that really gives you the feeling that democracy is always the right solution if it was implemented properly. And if there was, freedom to express your opinion freely without, being afraid that you will be jailed or you will be taken somewhere by, the government and the police. But definitely, I always, impressed with the governance of the United States as a democratic country, where by the end of the day, no official have the right to breach or violate any policy which has been approved by, not only the government, by the citizens themselves and the Congress themselves or whatever. And they have the right to say no whenever they can say no.
And I have some praise to share with you from Maryam Al-Jufairi, who says that she knows you on a personal level and can wholeheartedly say that you are truly a role model and an inspiration to Qatari women. I would like to say that being the case, how do you see your role going forward? What are your ambitions? Do you see change agency, we might call it, from here? What's on your agenda personally in the weeks and months and years ahead?
Honestly, I don't have any specific agenda. I mean, at a time I was thinking of, taking the role in the next election of the Shura. But then I thought, no, I should stop and I should give my chair and my voice to, or my, role to another new generation, to the new generation of the Qatari women, or even to any other women. But of course, I'm willing, and I still have my own ambition in terms of, working more and in different probably aspects of education, probably foreign affairs, probably, I don't know wherever I'm going to end, but I think I'm open to any new opportunity where I can serve my country, when I can, wherever even I can serve the humanity in general.
Well, I'd certainly like to say that when we fully open again the world after the pandemic, I hope that you'll visit Washington and the United States. We'd be happy to host you in the Capitol, and also if you venture further afield, we have 90 World Affairs Councils around the country, and they would eagerly engage with you. Dr. Hend Al-Muftah is a member of Qatar Shura Council. She's also professor and vice president of finance and administration at Doha Institute of Graduate Studies. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you this evening for you, this afternoon for us, and I really would love to speak with you in person. Thank you so much. This concludes our program, our Embassy Row Live program. Thank you all for joining us, and Hend, best of luck to you, and keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.